You are listening to Let's Talk Trio on podcasts. Keep up with the latest episodes by downloading the Podbean app or stream episodes via our social media accounts. Search for Let's Talk Trio on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. This podcast episode is brought to you by Longsdale Publishing. Is your program seeking ways to assess your students' college readiness? Does your program need a tool to document the effectiveness of your program? Longsdale Publishing is excited to offer the Strategic Learning Assessment, a 20-minute online assessment that provides recommendations and strategies to improve academic performance across 11 learning areas: communication, critical thinking, effective learning strategies, focus and concentration, growth mindset, persistence, seeking help, sense of belonging, stress management, test preparation, and time management. For as little as $3 per student, the Strategic Learning Assessment identifies strengths and areas for growth, along with tailored recommendations for each learning area. Want a complimentary sample account for yourself and 5 students? Contact Longsdale Publishing at 727-389-8026. Again, that number is 727-389-8026. Or visit our website for more information at www.longsdale.com. That website again is www.longsdale.com. Longsdale Publishing, your partner in student success. This episode is sponsored by Student Access. Student Access, the leader in TRIO software. Student Access is an online database solution that allows TRIO programs to track their students' information, connect with students by text messages, streamline the APR, and work from anywhere, all online, with automatic updates for changes from the Department of Education. Their technical support team includes former TRIO staff and has over 50 years of combined experience working with TRIO. Make it easier to focus on your priority, the students. For more information and to request a free demo, visit their website at www.studentaccess.com or call them toll-free at 1-800-801-1232. That website again is www.studentaccess.com or 1-800-801-1232. Be sure to share your favorite episodes on your social media by tapping that share button. This is a great way to support the podcast. Now here's your host, Juan Rivas.
Thank you, Amelia, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, listener, and welcome to this episode of Let's Talk Trio. This is Season 7, Episode 11. I am your host, Juan Rivas. Before we begin, some community announcements. TRIO Nation, be sure to call your congressional representatives to defend the TRIO programs. The Trump administration is seeking to eliminate the TRIO programs in their most recent proposed budget. Take action now by spreading the word and contacting your congressional representatives. Let's defend TRIO. In today's episode, we have Julia Kochanowski, TRIO alum of the McNair Scholars program from the University of North Dakota. Julia is on the podcast to share her own life experience, educational journey with TRIO McNair, and becoming a pathologist. Coming up in just a bit, Julia Kochanowski. A heartfelt thanks to our individual supporters, Angelica Villalpando, Rosario Riley, Dr. Ryan Barone, Dr. Jamie Motley, Dr. Jeff Naputi, Angelica Valdez, Felicia Rivera, Eric Lamaster, Jeff Calden, and Jaded Electronics. Thank you to our corporate sponsors, TrioJoblist.com, Nosotros Education Center, Longsdale Publishing, Student Access, and thetriostore.com, powered by Proforma. Visit www.thetriostore.com, your source for TRIO graduation stoles. Thank you all so much for your continued support of this podcast. You too can be a sponsor of the podcast. Head on over to Patreon and search for Let's Talk Trio. Choose one of 4 patron levels. You can support this podcast for as little as $1 a month. If you own a business that serves the TRIO community and want to sponsor the podcast, we have different sponsorship packages available. Contact us for details. Become a supporter with a one-time donation to the podcast business PayPal account. Our business handle is @Let'sTalkTrio. Your support helps lift TRIO voices. If you would like to nominate a participant, staff, or alumni to be on the podcast, send us an email at letstalktrio@gmail.com. That email again is letstalktrio@gmail.com. Again, a great episode featuring Julia Kochanowski, TRIO alum of the McNair Scholars program from the University of North Dakota. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. Hi, TRIO Nation. My guest on the Let's Talk TRIO podcast is a recent graduate of the University of North Dakota with a Master's of Science in Clinical and Translational Sciences with a focus in pathogenesis and human disease and currently works at Altru Health Systems as a medical scribe. She is a TRIO alum of the Student Support Services Program and McNair Scholars Program from the University of North Dakota when they are not busy with work or school, reading, and video games. Welcome to the podcast, Julia Kochanowski. Julia, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
We are super fortunate to have you on this podcast, Julia. First of all, congratulations on 1, landing a job, and 2, you're a recent graduate with a master's program.
Yes, thank you. I'm so excited. I still have more stuff in the future I'd like to do, and I'm sure we'll get to that at some point, but no, it's nice to kind of have a little bit of a break and be done with school for a bit.
Wonderful. How does it feel to be done with college? Or is there more college, like you were kind of alluding to earlier? Like, is there more of college in the future?
Yes. So actually, my goal is to now hopefully go to medical school. So I want to be a forensic pathologist and neuropathologist. Mm-hmm. So my ultimate goal would be to complete a combined program in MD, PhD. So then go the regular track with MD, but then get my PhD maybe in like neuroscience to kind of help build up that neuropathology experience later on. Mm-hmm. But we'll see how that ends up going. But right now I have the summer off. I'm kind of in between. I was applying to medical school and I'm on the wait list right now for one school. Wow. We'll see how that goes. And if it doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. I reapply again later because it's obviously very competitive like you would with any PhD program or grad school program. So I just keep bothering people until they like me and accept me.
Well, we like you and you're awesome. So again, thank you so much. We were talking a little outside the podcast about how we just kind of connected on Blue Sky over the TRIO Works hashtag, because right now TRIO is in need of a lot of support, right? We want to say thank you to our congressional representatives for continuing to support TRIO. But that's kind of like the reason why you're on here, is to also talk about your experience.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited. I have been very blessed to be part of many different programs in TRIO, and even ones that I wasn't necessarily part of as an undergraduate student. I still got to help out. Like I worked a little bit with Upward Bound and being an RTA and helped with the high school students too. I did that for 2 summers. And I think those connections that you make with other people in TRIO are ones that stay with you forever.
Absolutely.
And like some of the students that I had graduate that first summer that I did it, I want to say back in like 2022, like they still talk to me. They found me online and they'll send me messages every now and then. Or even like my next group of students that graduated, they still come and talk to me and they ask me questions about things. Or if they need help with homework, they'll message me with something. And I think having those connections is really important, especially with people that are a bit closer to your age. I think it's easier to relate in different ways too. And so you feel less intimidated sometimes. So I always try to make that clear to my students. Like, you can ask me anything if you need to. Like, I will always be there. And that's what this program is about, is just supporting each other the whole time.
Absolutely. And we're going to have more time to talk about that, because I didn't know that you were helping the Upward Bound programs as well. Like, even though you weren't a direct participant, it sounded like you were involved with Trio Upward Bound as well.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
That's
just for
awesome.
a little bit. I wanted to do more, but unfortunately, grad school schedule does not
Oh, yeah.
allow much for that. I did try one summer and oh my gosh, I thought I was gonna die.
Oh, no.
I I was so tired going into the lab every single day, then to just
Yeah.
go back because it's like when you're working with high school students, like you don't sleep. You're up doing stuff and you're making schedules and trying to keep track of students and all that stuff. And after that first summer, I was like, I can't.
Yeah. No, yeah. I totally hear
Oh,
that. So you got this new job. Can you tell us what this new job is about? What does it do? I saw the title medical scribe. I'm not sure what that means.
yeah, yeah. So actually, I got two new jobs. The second
Oh,
one, I'm
congrats.
sure you'll love to hear about. But this job is also to kind of help bolster my application for medical school if I need to reapply. And so what I do is I work in the emergency department of the hospital, and I basically just follow the physician around and I take notes of everything that they're talking about.
Oh,
So
wow.
I'll go in there and I listen to what the patient is saying and I'll write
Mhm.
that down. So then I can go back to the desk and type up kind of like a story of what they're telling us and what's happening, when it
Hmm.
started, their symptoms, things that they deny, like the symptoms that they don't have, kind of a deal. And it kind of helps guide the physicians, but also other people who may be reading that in different areas of the hospital who need to decide what testing to do, right? Because
Yeah.
like some symptoms we may list might indicate a stroke code, but they're
Hmm.
not actually having a stroke. So we need to make sure that the way we're phrasing it and writing it down makes sense enough that we know, like, oh, this isn't necessarily a massive, like, level one emergency, more so less. Like, we know how to kind of organize the patients and who we go and see, what tests we order, things like that. And so I'm using we as in the royal we because I like to be involved. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's very interesting because I also for 5 years I worked as an autopsy technician.
Oh,
So I
wow.
was in forensics doing cases like that and I that's how I fell in love with forensic pathology and why I want to get into it more.
Mhm.
But it's really nice to see another side of medicine that, where the patients are living.
Yeah.
I can interact with them a little bit more, but I think having that foundation of pathology really helped me. And so going into this job, you have to learn a lot. Like you have to learn anatomy terms and
Absolutely.
like
Yeah.
different kinds of medications. And a lot of these things I already knew because of my last job. So that made me really excited going into it is that it wasn't too overwhelming. Thankfully, I knew
Hmm.
some of the basics. But the second job that I just got, because right now I'm kind of in this weird in between with being on a wait list, as I might have to pick up any day and move to wherever the school is. So I picked up these two jobs just to kind of keep me over the summer, and the second one is in the TRIO office.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
be helping out, just like organizing some files and stuff online, just to kind of help keep them going while they're getting everything prepared for different programs and switched over and whatnot. And so that one I'm excited about because I was nervous over the summer where this other job, it is part-time, so it's more geared towards students. And I was like, well, I just graduated. I need a job that I can pay my bills with, right? And I still need medical experience though. So that's why I took this job. And I slowly started to realize that I was like, this is not going to cover me
Mhm.
where I need it to. And
Mhm.
so instead of just like trying to take out a loan or something, I actually called the head of our trio department and was like, listen, I'm in this position where I kind of don't know what to do. I'm panicking a little bit. And I was wondering if there was anything at all that I could do to help out within Trio, because it's a
Mhm.
department that I love so much anyway. So I would love to go back, but just something that I can do to help me with paying my bills and stuff. And he was like, yeah, yeah, like let me look into it and I'll get back to you. So
Yeah.
then like the next day he called me and they found something that I was able to do. It's just a temp job for over the summer. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. Because then that
That's
takes
awesome.
me to when I might be finding out. And then past that, if I don't get into medical school, I can, just switch gears, get a full-time job somewhere else within the hospital and things like that. And so I was very excited that I get to kind of go back and forth and do both. Because I also think working in that type of environment is really important for someone who is going to be a future physician in the first place, because you need to know how to communicate.
Absolutely. That's important.
Yeah, and then just working with other people, especially of different age groups and different backgrounds, is really important to see where they're coming from. So I think that is a perfect thing for me to also take up and just work with and get to know some of these students more and learn about them and whatnot throughout the summer.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And you're truly, as a recent graduate of having multiple jobs, like that is very, I don't know, like you hear that more often or you don't hear that more often where you have folks in like that are recent graduate of a master's program that have multiple jobs.
I would say more often than not, I would hear people who gra or like during their time in grad school, it was like just grad school. They didn't do anything else. And the way that it worked for me was that I couldn't have another on-campus job, but I could work an outside position as long as it wasn't impacting what I was doing in the lab.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can be very tricky.
For sure.
Because obviously if you mess up with your contract, they can terminate it at any point
Oh,
in
for sure.
time.
Uh-huh.
So I think a lot of grad students didn't work through grad school, but I've seen kind of a mix where like some people would graduate and it took them a really long time to find a job,
Mm-hmm.
especially within the sciences, because you have to then decide whether you want to go like to the industry route or stay in academia. And then when you do that, a lot of it is up to networking.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have like prior networking skills, it can be really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, I think with doing social media and stuff and being on things like Blue Sky, you get to meet a lot of people that way. And
Mm-hmm.
so I have never been too worried about my ability to find a job because I'm like, at least I know people all over the country
Right.
that might be able to help me out. And I've seen it where like I've known people who just did not care. Like they didn't really go to conferences. If they did,
Mm-hmm.
they just kind of kept to themselves and they're like, "Oh, it's fine." But then it came around to applying for jobs and like they can't get anything. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
other people who really put themselves out there and have talked to people, they've had different jobs lining up. And so it's just a matter of like how you handle yourself as a student, I think. And that is something that I want to say Trio really prepared me for.
Oh, that's
I think
wonderful.
my
Yeah.
advisors were definitely always like, Julia, you're a massive introvert. Like, you have to go and talk to people. And I was like, okay. And so anytime I went to a conference, I'd flip a switch and I would talk to everyone that I like really could the whole time. And then I'd leave and I wouldn't talk to another person for like 2 weeks.
That sounds like me too. I very much relate to being an introvert. I prefer, right, funny enough, I run a podcast talking to people, but
Right?
after the podcast I'm like, all right, I need a recharge for at least a day or two.
Right,
Um
exactly.
yeah. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Are you seeking guidance to enhance your TRIO project's effectiveness and success? Look no further. Nosotros Education Center, NEC, is here to empower your TRIO project with expert consulting services. NEC's mission is to promote the effectiveness and impact of TRIO programs. Since 2003, NEC has specialized in providing professional development and in-service staff trainings, allowable cost services, for TRIO projects across the country. The team at NEC, with over 60 years of combined TRIO experience, offers customized workshops and seminars for project staff, compliance assessments, external evaluations, working on and submitting APRs, database customization and training, developments of policies and procedures manuals, and project implementation or reorganization services. Additionally, NEC has secured over $774 million in federal funding with a 92% success rate through their live and on-demand proposal workshops, assistance with data collection and review, detailed technical reviews, and comprehensive proposal development services. Join the hundreds of colleges, agencies, and TRIO projects across the country who benefited from NEC's expertise. Nosotros Education Center, your partner in TRIO's project success. Visit their website at nosotros.edu.org. Again, that's nosotros.edu.org.
And now, back to the podcast. So we hear a little bit about that you engage a lot in social media, but at the top of the podcast, we talked about how you enjoy reading and video games. I'm going to put you on the spot because I'm a video gamer myself.
Ooh, okay.
Do you have a favorite video game
A
or a favorite
favorite video
franchise?
game. Right. Ooh, okay. I want to say that my favorite is probably going to be Legend of Zelda.
The Legend of Zelda. All right, right on.
Yes,
Awesome.
I really
Awesome.
enjoy
Awesome.
that. I'm a big Nintendo person.
Yeah.
I grew up with that, and that's how like my family, my siblings and I, we would always play it. We played a lot of Mario, but I liked Legend of Zelda because of the fact that it was a game that I could just play by myself.
Yes.
But then,
Absolutely.
as I got older, I would go over to my friend's place and I would sit on their couch and they would have it on their big screen TV there and they would start playing the game and like we would just talk while I would watch them play. And I also really loved that idea of it, that like we could just
Mhm.
laugh about things happening in the game and have like a good way to connect over that. And then finally when I was able to afford like my own kind of handheld, I think in my first well, I think it was the Switch. When I got the Switch and I was able to start bringing that to their place because I got the light and I could put Zelda on my game so that I would play it on my side of the couch and they would have it on
Right.
the TV and we would just sit there and talk to each other.
Oh, that's
And it was
awesome.
so fun. I
Yeah.
love it. It's one of my favorite ways to just like connect with other people too. I love watching other people play video games as well. And so it was a fun thing to do. My sister and I will actually regularly have like Zoom nights where we'll play Mario Party. And so
Oh.
we'll connect online that way. And so we can do that. Or like when I go home to Michigan, my cousins and I will play Mario Party, things like that. And so I am a huge Nintendo fan.
That's awesome. So, me too. I'm a huge Nintendo fan. Definitely favor the Legend of Zelda series. So much lore in the Legend of Zelda, by
Oh,
the way.
yeah.
Yeah, so much lore. So that keeps you busy on all ends: work, school, video gaming, just a ton of things that you're doing. How do you keep yourself balanced?
It's definitely hard. And I think one of the hardest things that I had to learn was how to listen to my own body when I was
Mhm.
getting too overwhelmed or too overstimulated and how to respond to that. Because I think going through undergrad and then directly into my master's program, a lot of it was just pushing to
Mhm.
keep going to get everything done.
Mhm.
And then I want to say it was my second year of grad school that I was so burnt out that I was like, I feel like I can't even do anything. Like I'd get home and I would know that I'd have to study, but my brain just like could not comprehend
Mhm.
anything past that point. And so then I really had to sit and be like, okay, well, now that I did this to myself, like how do we
Mhm.
fix it and move past that?
Mhm.
And being burnt out is not something that gets fixed overnight, but I had to find a schedule that worked well for me. And also just like telling myself that it's okay to relax. Because I would often be sitting on my couch and then I'd make myself feel guilty.
Mhm.
And so that I wouldn't really actually enjoy that time that I'm sitting on the couch. And so then I would feel even more exhausted after that hour or two that I was there. And it wouldn't have meant anything. So that I started to learn, okay, well, if I'm sitting here, I'm going to let myself be happy for just a little bit so that I feel more recharged and ready to go back to doing what I was doing. And I tried to break it down, like the work that I was doing, into different groups so that we would do it in different times, spread it out a little bit, have more like not really rewards in between, but like maybe 20 minutes of just sitting on my phone where I can zone out, or like 10 minutes to get up and just walk around my apartment, things like that, where I can kind of balance it and go back and forth.
Yeah.
And I also tried to really keep my work to just the week. I know there's this huge thing with grad students where like you have to work 24/7, you have to always be in the lab. And
Oof.
some people would get really mad at me actually for not being in the lab all the time. But if I had to do lab work on the weekend, I'd go in and do the necessary things and I'd go home. So I'd be there
Mhm.
for, 2, 3 hours or whatever. But I let myself relax on the weekends. And, maybe during the week on Tuesday, I was really tired and I wasn't feeling great. So then I don't do anything on Tuesday, but then that would push over into my weekend. So it kind of gave me a little bit of a buffer. So that way, if I did need a break, I wouldn't feel too bad about taking it because I scheduled myself that time ahead of time. And so I knew that I had it there if I needed it. And so that was a good way of kind of helping me cope
That's
and
good.
recover from everything that I had put myself through. So yeah, I think my biggest piece of advice for other people who are younger who may be listening to this is to take care of yourself first.
I love that. It's good advice.
School is important and getting all your stuff done is important, but your health is more important. And when you burn out, it's not going to be fun.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's good advice. So I'm going to
Yeah.
ask you a reflection question. So far in
Yes.
2025, what has this year taught you?
Ooh, I think the biggest lesson that I learned this year was really to trust myself and my own abilities
Mm,
and to be confident in myself because there are a lot of people out there who are going to look at you based on maybe the background that you came from or whatever it may be, different conflicts that have occurred and tell you that you can't do something or that you're not good enough to
mm,
do
mm,
something. And you really have to sit there and think about whether what they're saying is going to impact you or not and how you're going to let that impact you.
mm.
And when I was younger, I think a lot of the times I would let spite drive me. And so if someone told me that I couldn't do something, I would be like, oh yeah, just watch and I'm gonna do
Yeah,
it. And I think that's how I got through a lot of my undergrad, which is really funny. But
that's
now
so
I'm kind of
cool.
at this point in my life where like I'm tired and I'm like, I don't really care about a lot of drama or a lot of conflict issues. Like if I have a problem with someone, I'm just going to talk to them about it and we're going to figure it out. Because at the end of the day, if I'm working with you, we don't have to be best friends. I'm
Hmm.
there to do a job.
Hmm.
So the most I can do is be civil and be nice and get my job done and go. Like, so it's trusting my abilities and knowing who I am as a person, knowing that I am smart and that I am capable and that I can use my voice to say things and speak up for things even though people may not want me to. But I promised myself a long time ago I would never let people scare me from using my voice.
Oh, that's yeah. I love that that's what you've taught yourself and that's something, a lesson that you've learned about what using your voice. That's wonderful. So just
Yeah,
kudos all around because that's amazing.
thank you.
What do you hope to accomplish this year? I mean, you've already accomplished so much. You just graduated, you got a new job. What else do you hope to
Right.
accomplish?
Oh man, I think one of the bigger things would be hopefully starting medical school if I get in. But oops, sorry, my email just made a really
Oh,
loud noise
no,
that
you're
I
good.
heard randomly.
I don't think I heard anything on this end.
Okay, good. That scared me because I have my headphones in, so I was not expecting that to happen. Uh, but aside from that, I think honestly a lot in my personal life too, just aside from academia and whatnot, and pursuing more school, I
Hmm.
want to also get more involved in like nature and stuff. I
Oh,
love to be outside, and
okay.
being in North Dakota, it is hard to be outside. It
I
is
can imagine.
cold 9 months out of the year and it's
Oof.
freezing. And it drives me crazy. And so I want to be able to go outside and do more things and like take walks. And I think I want to have more of a focus on my overall like health and trying to get more exercise in. Because
Mm-hmm.
when I was working at forensics, a lot of that was like manual labor. And so I was getting a lot of exercise in that way. And now that I don't have that, I have noticed that I've just been sitting around a lot, and I was like, well, this is not good for me. So I think I need to just find new ways to get excited and be outside and enjoy being outside. And just
Absolutely.
a short, funny story. A little while ago, I went in to do like a regular physical and blood work and stuff with my physician, and she got in all the results and she calls me and she's like, so I went in, actually, they didn't discuss it over the phone, but she looked at me and she's like, so do you like ever go outside? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, your vitamin D is so low. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, it's probably because I'm in a lab all day and I
Yeah.
don't get to see the sun. And we just laughed for a while. And she's like, yeah, you need to go outside more.
I mean, that's a good thing to hear from a doctor, though, right? To say,
Right,
or your physician is saying, just go outside a little bit more, rather than, like, oh, you have to take X and Y, Z pills to make sure all these
right.
other, but go outside, go outside. It'll do you some good.
Yeah, yeah, no. So that's something that I would personally like to achieve this year. Hopefully, weather permitting, but I would love that.
That's wonderful. So we're at the part of the podcast that I love. We're going to rewind the clocks a bit. Can you tell us about your upbringing and your experience?
Yeah. So growing up, I grew up in a town called Howell, right outside of Detroit in Michigan.
So you're not from North
And
Dakota.
no, I'm not. I moved here for college, but just to go back to kind of how I grew up, it was definitely hard for my situation.
Hmm.
My parents got divorced when I was really, really young. And on both sides, there were a lot of different issues. So my dad is actually a veteran. He was in Vietnam and stuff. And due
Mm,
to his experiences there, he struggled a lot with PTSD because of the
mhm,
things that they did. And because of that, he turned to alcoholism. And then he also had some issues with gambling. And a lot of people in my family had a hard time with him, but I would consider myself to be very lucky where I had a really, really great relationship with him. And I think he saw that I was kind of like a little black sheep of our family.
mm,
And so he was there for me more. And I think he had some regrets about not being there enough for my brother and sister. Because my sister is about 12 years older than me, and then my brother is 8 years older. And so they have, a vastly different experience when they were young compared to me. And so thankfully I was very close with my dad, but I struggled a lot with my mom. So my mom, she is disabled. She has something called Treacher-Collins syndrome, and because of that, she's also deaf. And a lot of it growing up, because my brother and sister were so much older, they also moved out a lot sooner. And so I had to help my mom with a lot of different things just in general. So like any phone calls that she needed to make, I would be making those for her. If she needed to talk to people for any reason, I would have to be there to help her. So especially if we went to like a doctor's office, I would be there trying to kind of interpret. Because when I was younger, she actually didn't know sign language yet.
mm.
They had only really taught her how to read lips, and that can only really get you so far. And so I had a couple of signs that, as a kid, you make up to kind of accommodate for that language barrier. And working with that, like there was a lot of stress that was there. And my mom and I just really didn't get along very well.
I'm sorry to
And
hear that.
so, yeah, but I mean, it's one of those things where like looking back on it, kind of is what it is. We're trying to mend that relationship now. It's around, it's there.
It's there. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we'll see where that kind of goes. And honestly, my sister was the one who kind of picked up a lot of the slack, I guess I would say. Because when my parents got divorced, obviously my mom was very upset about it. So she tended to kind of close herself off.
Hmm.
And so my sister was the one who was really there for me. And she taught me so much. And so I just love my sister dearly. And very much so look up to her as a huge role model in my life for all the things she was able to accomplish and things like that. But I struggled a lot because then I also had a lot of health problems too growing up. I think that's where a lot of the issues within my family kind of started because they looked at me, and just by looking at me, I looked like a typically healthy kind of person, but that wasn't necessarily the case. And I think as a child, when I didn't know how to explain the symptoms that I was having or how I was feeling, I would often say, "Oh, my stomach hurts" or "My head hurts." And when a kid says that, you're like, oh, whatever, you take some Advil and you kind of get over it.
Sure,
But
sure.
this was
Yeah.
like every single day for me.
Mm.
And so it caused a lot of problems because then I didn't want to go to school because I was in so much pain. So then people started to think that I was just trying to get out of school because I didn't want to go.
Hmm.
And that made it really hard as well. And I was decent about going for a while, until I would say my junior year of high school is when it got really, really bad. And so I missed almost that entire year because I just could not move. I was in so much pain and I was just sick all the time. Like I couldn't even eat anything because I would immediately get sick and I
Hmm.
couldn't keep anything down. And the issue was like going into the hospital, I really did not receive great care. They would often look at me, and because I want to say that it was in my history that I did not like school, they would see me as someone who was abusing the system to get out of school.
Oh no.
And so then they really didn't pay much attention to me. I actually have a memory of when I was 16, we went to the hospital and I told them that I was so nauseous that I was like just throwing up all the time and I couldn't keep anything down and I was in a lot of pain. And the physician who was there just looked at me and went, "Well, you're probably just pregnant." And I said, "No, that's not it. I
Whoa.
know that for a fact." And he goes,
Yeah.
"Well, I think that's what it is. So I'm just going to prescribe Zofran and then you can go home." He didn't run a single test, nothing, no blood work,
No. Oh
none of that,
no.
just sent me home. And that was it. And I remember being so frustrated
Hmm.
because then my mom kept hearing that, I was making things up because that's what the physicians were saying. So then that's what she started to believe. And so that made our relationship even worse because I kept demanding like that there was something wrong. And she's like, well, all these physicians say that you're crazy. So,
Mm.
and it was really hard. And so after that year, I missed probably like half of my senior year of high school too.
Mhm.
And a lot of people did not think that I was just generally going to succeed in life. They had this idea of me being lazy and thinking that I just didn't want to do anything, that I just wanted to sit at home in my room and all this stuff. And I remember often being compared to my dad too, where they're like, oh, you're probably just going to be an alcoholic like your dad. So, like, anytime I had something where I was like, oh, I want to be this when I'm older, I want to be this, they would be like, no, you're not. Like,
Oh,
that's not an option for
yeah.
you. And so I remember my senior year, I started applying to different schools, and a lot of people were like, why are you even bothering?
And like, why are you trying?
And yeah, exactly. And thankfully, I think I graduated at just a 3.0. Like I somehow managed, even though I wasn't there. And so I actually got a lot of emails from the University of North Dakota where they were like, hey, you should really apply here. And at
Mhm.
first I was like, I've never even heard of North Dakota. Like,
Yeah.
I don't really care much to go there, but I applied and I got in. And they even gave me a small scholarship. So I was like, you know what? I might as well because I want to get out of this town. I want to get out of the state. I want to go somewhere new and basically just start over and like see what I can do because I was tired of being at home.
Hmm.
And I was like,
Hmm.
you know what? I can do more for myself than anyone else can do for me right now. And so eventually I was able to move out here. And then I started to be in more control of my own health, I would say. And so I was able to actually find a really great physician who, within the span of like 6 months, we figured out like half of the stuff that was going on with me
Oh my
and we were
gosh,
able
yeah.
to get it under control so that way I didn't have to worry about it so much. Like there's still it's chronic, so I still deal with it every single day, but it's not as bad. And
Hmm.
so I was like, it could have all been solved so long ago, but because I'm a woman and I was young, I just wasn't listened to. And so going through all of that, it was hard.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I was very frustrated because obviously growing up, it felt like I wasn't supported by anyone around me. I was told that I couldn't do things, that I wouldn't be good at things. And
Hmm.
so then when I think I graduated undergrad, I remember being so excited because I was like, ha, look at me now. I
Yeah.
did it. And yeah, a lot of people, like, now that they saw that I was doing really well, they're like, wow, yeah, like, we really didn't expect you to do that. And I don't think a lot of it really came from a place of like hatred towards
Hmm.
me or anything. It was more so a like, they were looking at the situation and saw that I wasn't doing anything and they didn't know much about it. And so they were
Hmm.
kind of like, like she's just another one that fell through the cracks. Might as well
Mm.
keep going and,
Yeah.
do whatever we can for these other students. And
Right.
so it was hard feeling like I was left behind because of something that I couldn't necessarily control. And so that is still something that frustrates me to this day is just not being
Yeah.
believed in the first place. But I
I'm
think
so
that
sorry.
also,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's something that happens all the time to so many different people, and their pain is always like undermined and just not paid attention to enough like it should be. And so I think that's also kind of what drives me to also be in medicine is like, I know what it's like to be a patient. I know
Hmm.
what it's like to get those like results back from your blood work and all the lab work and have them be like, well, it doesn't look like anything's wrong, so you're fine.
Hmm.
And be so frustrated because you're like, clearly there's something wrong.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that I went through and kind of starting on my own, was I felt okay, which I think stems from the fact that growing up, especially through high school, I was on my own a lot because the relationship with my mom was so rocky, she would often leave for a while.
Hmm.
And so I knew how to take care of myself in that aspect fairly well. So when I moved out, I was just like, sweet, I'm on my own.
Yeah.
I was all excited about it. And, there was definitely some learning curve still to being an adult and, managing that and, picking out the right food at the grocery store and not just buying myself a birthday cake anytime I wanted it. But like,
Right.
um, I felt very prepared in that aspect. And because of all that, it made me like hyper independent,
Hmm.
where I didn't ever want to ask anyone for help. I didn't want to like talk to anyone about anything I was struggling with. None of that. Like,
Mm.
even to this day, I still struggle with asking for help. And
Hmm.
I will sit there and be like, okay, I know I'm in a situation where it's appropriate to ask for help and I should ask someone for help, but my brain and my body are like, nah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Um, but thankfully with Trio, because they found me, I had no idea that Trio even existed.
Hmm.
And they reached out to me. And so when I found them, they kind of helped guide me and show me these different things. I think it went way beyond just academics and also into my personal life to show me how I can grow as a person, but also showing me that it is okay to ask for help. Like while I still
Absolutely.
struggle with it now, they were always there no matter what. Like if I had something happen, they would be like the first people to call me and be like, "Hey, are you okay?"
Yeah.
Um, and so having that support there, I was like, "Oh wow, this is crazy. You mean this is what normal people get?" Like they have people who call them to check in on them and all that stuff. And so I was very excited when I got to meet all of them. And it got to the point where I did think of a lot of them as like family. Because I was like, this is a great relationship to have with people that I never really got to experience before. So
That's awesome. That's awesome.
yeah.
Thank you for giving us a little preview of like your college and into what you were going to be start doing, and then also just a review of a reflection of your life too about things that have happened. And I'm so sorry that that was your experience, and
Right.
it sounds like you really took that opportunity just to start thriving on your own.
Yeah, yeah. I really did. And um I feel like when I think back on my experience when I was younger, I definitely can see how I've grown as a person, and it makes me happy to think about that. Like I still have my struggles here and there like everyone else
Sure, sure.
does, but I think it's just understanding that, not every single day is going to be a good day, and not every single day needs to be a bad day. Like there is going to be fluctuations, and it's okay to just go with the flow of things. And
Absolutely.
it's okay to take time to yourself and to understand what you need and to take care of yourself and prioritize yourself over other things as well. And so I think a lot of that was very, very important to me. And I'm glad that I had that lesson. And I don't think I would be where I am today without that kind of a lesson.
How would your family describe you?
Ooh, how my family would describe me. I actually, a while ago when I was applying to medical school, had this question where they're like, how would your family members describe you? And I had to text them and be
Oh,
like,
wow.
what would you
Yeah.
say about me?
What was the response? I'm curious. Like, did they respond to you right away, or
Um,
were there some like, let me
my
think about that?
my sister responded right away, and I think she said like hardworking and caring, compassionate, things like that, that like I was happy to hear about. And
Yeah.
my brother, he's so funny. I love him so much. He didn't respond right away, so I was like, uh-oh, he probably thinks I'm crazy or something. And I ended up seeing him like 2 weeks later or something like that, because we had my cousin's wedding in Colorado, so we were all there together.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And yeah, it was a lot of fun. And so he was like, "Oh yeah, remember when you sent that? I was gonna reply with something funny, but then I thought you would think that it was mean, so I didn't say anything." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "I was gonna say that she's fashionable." And he's like,
Fashionable.
"Oh, your pictures online, you just look so cool. Like, where do you find your clothes?" And I was like, "Well, thank you. I would not be offended
Oh.
if you sent that at all." But I think they know I'm stubborn. I think that's the biggest thing is all of
Mm,
them will tell people is that I'm stubborn. I don't like taking no for an
mm,
answer. And I wouldn't necessarily describe myself as confrontational, but if there is a situation which warrants someone to use their voice, I am always one of the first people to speak up. And that is something that I've always been very proud to
hmm.
do and to do for other people. And so probably when I was younger, they would describe me as confrontational, but not so much anymore, hopefully.
Can you talk to us about your experiences in both middle school and high school? What was that experience like for you? I know you alluded to it earlier about
hmm
that you were in and out of the hospital, missed a lot in your senior year. Can you
hmm
just kind of give us a recap of what your educationally, what did you experience? What did you enjoy?
Yeah, so in middle school, oh gosh, I didn't really mind middle school as much. Personally, I hated high school. I do not like to think about my high school times very fondly, which is something a lot of people, when I first meet them and I tell them that I absolutely hated school when I was a kid, they're always
Hmm.
surprised because they're like,
Yeah, that's
you've been in
surprising.
school for 9 years now and you plan to do more, like, how did you hate school? And I'm like, well, it's a different environment.
Mm,
Being in high school and middle school and all that is vastly different than your experience in college. And I think it's
hmm.
because you get to have more control over what you're doing every single day that makes
For
it
sure.
easier. And so in like middle school, I want to say I was more outgoing. I was in choir. I liked to be around a lot of my friends and hang out and do stuff and whatnot. I want to say I was better about going to school through then. There were a few times where, I would be pulled aside and they would be like, Julia, you are missing a lot of days. And so I would make up
Mm,
my work though. But I think at that point in time, I also didn't really struggle with schoolwork in and of itself. I didn't have to study. I would just breeze through it and I would be done. And that was
hmm
that. And so
hmm
I just didn't really see it as like a huge obstacle to me. And when I got to high school, it was kind of the same way. I want to say ninth grade was probably my best year where my attendance was great.
Outstanding.
I had a great
Yeah.
time with a lot of my friends and the classes that I was taking. And I think I started like real top of my class too, and I was so excited about it. And then like all of my health issues really kicked in again, and then it kind of went downhill from there. But it is what it is. And so I think high school, the one thing that I really hated was just the social dynamics of it all and all the different groups that would kind of form. Because I definitely felt like more of an outcast. I did have my group of friends, and I had a lot of friends, but as I got more sick, I think they started to feel like they couldn't necessarily rely on me because I wasn't there as much. So then we started to have that kind of distance between us. And
hmm
so I started to lose some friends after a little while. And so I think that also made it harder when I was trying to get back into going to school, just kind of thinking about the fact where like I don't have anything there anymore. Like a lot of
hmm
my friends have moved on. They have different friends now. No one really cares, kind of a thing. And so that also didn't help. And I know I struggled a lot with mental health too, just due to like not really being listened to and having a hard time at home. And, those compounding factors just made it really, really hard. And I started to struggle a lot with anxiety and depression. And I didn't really know where to go. I did have a therapist who was absolutely lovely, and I loved talking to her, and she did help a lot. But at the same time, I think it was one of those situations where, like, if my health wasn't improving, my mental health wouldn't be improving either. Like, there was not much I could do because I was stuck in that position.
hmm
And so working my way through high school, it was hard. And I hated it. And I always will talk to people that are like, oh, I wish I could go back to being like 14 or whatever. And I was like,
hmm
uh-uh.
For you, it's no. That's like no.
Yeah, I was like, no way will I ever want to go back to being a kid again. I don't
Right.
care. Like the nostalgia of it, like thinking about like, Sunday morning cartoons and like
Oh,
different
sure,
things,
sure.
going to have like sleepovers with friends, those things, sure, I do enjoy it. But when I sit and think about it, I'm like, no, I would never ever do that. And so when I worked with my high school students, I would even tell them because they're like, well, Julia, you're so smart. So obviously you can be a scientist and a physician, but we can't do that. And I was like, no. That is not the case. I hated high school just as much as you guys did. I was doing horribly. Like, I didn't care. I was tired. I didn't talk to anyone. Like, I told them, I was like, I've had so many problems in my life that there's not a single thing that you could tell me that would make me think any differently of you or that would
Yeah.
change my opinion on your situation.
Yeah.
Because I've been through it. And like, there's obviously like certain situations that I can't understand, especially cultural and stuff like that. But I would always tell them to, like, I will always do my best to understand and to
hmm
hear you out because I know it's different. And I might not be the best person to talk to about it. But if you want to, I will do my best to sit there and listen because I can't judge you. Like, I've done stupid things my whole life. And so it's not fair for me to also judge you for those because that's the whole point of like your teenage years. It's also just learning how to be a functioning human to go off into the world. So it's like, you might make a stupid decision. I might be mad at you, but I'm not going to hate you.
Yeah. Absolutely. Good point. Uh, at what point did you start thinking about college? Because I remember earlier in the conversation you said that people had very low bar expectations of you. People
Yeah.
said that you were just going to graduate, or might not even graduate,
Hmm.
and just kind of like do your own thing.
Yeah.
When did you start thinking about college, and who did you
Oh
talk to about
man.
it?
I don't think I talked to anyone about applying to college because to myself at least, I might have talked a little bit to my sister, but I'm not entirely sure to what degree. I can't really remember, but there was even a portion of time where I was considering dropping out of high school. Like
Oh,
I had pretty much everything set up where I was
yeah.
like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done. And thankfully I did not. So that is one thing that I will always appreciate that my mom did for me was not let me drop out of high school.
Oh, good. Good. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, that, but also I think it got to a point where I saw all the people I was around was applying to college. And we actually had like our class would have these seminars where we would go into the auditorium and they would talk about applying to college and how to do these different things. And I remember like sitting there and kind of writing some of this stuff down. And I probably did talk to my sister about it and like bounce a few ideas off of her.
Hmm.
And she was always very supportive too. And I don't think I told her where I was applying though, because at the time, I actually grew up always wanting to be a marine biologist. I think from like first grade on, I wanted to do that so bad. But then it wasn't until my senior year of high school that I switched to wanting to do more forensic science related stuff. And so I was like, I don't even know what school to go to, what to look into. So I just remember Googling like what schools have forensic science.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I went through the list and I think I applied to three total schools. I applied somewhere in Florida and I did get in there, but then I found out later it was a very, very like religious Catholicism, like
Oh,
heavy school. And then I was
mm,
like, never mind.
that one's out.
That one's not for me because I am not Catholic.
Yeah.
And then I applied to UND and so I got in there. And so I had that and I was very excited about that. But then I also applied to somewhere I think it was the University of Toronto in Canada because
Oh,
we were
wow.
so close that I was like, that
Yeah.
would be really nice to go there. And they had a cool program, but they had a cutoff for their GPA. And so I think I missed it by like 0.002. And so
Mm.
they're like, unfortunately, we can't consider your application. And I was like, oh man, I remember being frustrated, but I was like, I get it. Because at the end of the day, you want someone who's going to have a steady GPA because it is a higher like upscale school kind of a deal where they
I see.
have higher standards and stuff. So I
Uh-huh.
was like, you know what, whatever. I got into UND, so I'll go there. And I remember my family was very split, where a lot of them were like, oh, that's great. Like, sure, North Dakota. Or my mom was very, very upset about it.
Mm.
She would go and talk to my friends to try to get my friends to convince me to not go.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think she just wanted me to stay in state, and that was the
Yeah.
biggest thing. And I
Yeah.
didn't apply to a single school in state.
Hmm. Hmm.
I just wanted to get out and go somewhere new so bad. And so finally I came out here and I really did not think much about it. I was just like, I'll get my degree and then go and do whatever. I
Hmm.
have no idea. And I actually got really surprised by the different things that I was offered here and
Hmm.
that I wouldn't have had these same experiences anywhere else, especially like working as an autopsy technician. I started while I was an undergrad,
Hmm.
and most places aren't going to let you do things to the degree that I did while working unless like it was here because they only hired undergraduate students. And so I got to be very, very involved in the process and looking over things. And a lot of places won't let you do that same
Yeah.
thing while you're in school. And so I was very lucky and just the people that I got to meet. And I felt like, especially during undergrad, a lot of people really did care about me as a student. And I feel like with a lot of college campuses, they're so big and there's so many students that, you kind of are just like another number in the system. Whereas here, when I would talk with people, they were actually very excited that I was there and they wanted to work with me. And even now, like at my graduation ceremony, like a week or two ago, um, I ran into people that I still kept contact with, but from undergrad that I had worked with, like my one scholarship advisor, and I met with her all the time. And she's like, oh my gosh, we have to take a picture. Like, we'll put it up on our website and all this stuff because they were so
Hmm.
excited. And I was like, it's nice to form those kinds of connections and have that.
Absolutely. You said earlier in the podcast that Trio found you. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so my first year of college was definitely hard. So, because I was still struggling with my health stuff, that made it hard for me to go to all the classes because I somehow got set up with 21 credits my very first semester, which is a full load of
That is over and
classes.
overload. Yeah, no.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I was overwhelmed and I was struggling. And I had this scholarship that was the US Master Scholarship. And so part of that, you have to fulfill one of like three requirements or whatever. And the one option that I picked was tutoring. So I was able to tutor through the TRIO program. But
Mm-hmm.
I got set up with a student and like they also weren't like showing up and then I wasn't really going and so we just kept like canceling on each other. And I was probably a jerk, I won't lie. We're like they would try to call and check in on me and I wouldn't really say anything because at that same point in time, I actually found out that my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and dementia. And
Oh.
so at that point, I was also thinking about dropping out because I was like, well, now my dad's sick and I just moved over 1,000 miles away from him. And like, I wanted to be able to be there for him, but he was very much so like against me dropping out. I would talk to him and he was like, no, 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 like, you got to stay in school. Like, you have to keep going. Like, you're going to do all these different things. And we would joke around. He's like, at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, like, you can be a mailman like me or a mail lady. And he's like, it'll be the family business. And I
Yeah.
was like, no, thanks. But he was a really great like tool for my motivation too. And so I always really appreciated that. And so after that semester, like when I was like, yeah, you know what? Like I want to get myself back on track because I stopped going to class and whatnot. And
Mhm.
so my GPA was low. I want to say it was probably a 0.294. Like it was bad because I
Wow.
just didn't go and I was sick and then my dad was sick and I was frustrated. And I think that next semester, like a few weeks in, I got an email from this lady. Her name is Cheryl Kingsbury. And she was like, hey, I was just thinking about you from the one time that we met. And so I figured I would look into your like student profile and whatnot. And I saw that you're not doing too well. Do you want to come in and talk about it? And so I was like, you know what? Sure. I might as well. Like now I need help and I need someone who can help me out. So I went in and I went into the student support services office and sat down with her and she, oh my gosh, is a blessing. I love her so much and she helped me out. Like we were able to completely like wipe that first semester from my history. Like I got all like withdrawals or whatever W's for the classes, but I got my money back for tuition.
Oh wow.
And
Yeah.
yeah, because we were like, look at these different circumstances. Like obviously I wasn't going to succeed. And so then we also sat down together and talked out like my classes for that semester. So we got rid of some of them, changed them around, like reorganized everything. And then I would go in like 2 or 3 times a week and I would sit with a tutor as well and go
Mhm.
over that. And she also got
Mhm.
me into like this study skills class that they had. Because I was able to cruise through pretty well if I went to class because I didn't really need to study. But once classes started getting a little bit harder, that's when I was like, I need to learn how to study. Like I can't just keep doing whatever.
Mhm.
And so she really helped me like get my feet on the ground and start going again. And so I was there all the time, just like studying outside of our office. And like it felt like a place that I could go where I felt comfortable to be. And then also knowing that like if I had a question, there was someone right around the corner that I could talk to about it. And so after working with her, I want to say for like a year and a half, I made a friend through one of my on-campus jobs. I was just working as like an office assistant kind of thing. And she was telling me how she was a McNair scholar. And she's like, I get to do all this cool research and like I'm working in this area and I'm working with this professor. And I was like, that's so cool. I want to do that. And I went and talked with Cheryl and she's like, oh yeah, I was thinking that you would be a good candidate for the McNair program. And at that point in time, they had just started the pre-McNair program as well. So I was able to do that so that way I could go to the meetings and like see what it was about. And
Mhm.
then once I reached the amount of credits that I needed, I could do the interview for it and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I remember that interview terrified me. Um, it was really funny because the guy I was interviewing with, his name was Derek, so he was the head of the program and whatnot. And I'd actually told this story at one of our like luncheon things that we had a little while ago.
Mhm.
And he didn't yell at me, but he scolded me for sharing the story. Um, because we went in there and he was looking, over my grades and he was like, so Julia, I see that you have some C's in your like grade history and whatnot for these different classes. And I was like, oh yeah, like I just kind of struggled with it. I had a hard time, but like I learned a lot from the class, blah blah. you give some kind of an answer to show that like you grew and you understood how to like fix your problems for the next time, basically.
Right.
And so that's what I did because I was mortified. He, to me, was so intimidating. And I was like, this guy hates me because I have a C
Oh
on my
no.
transcript.
Yeah.
And he was sitting there and he's like, okay, well, like, I really like you. I think you're cool. But now I have to pitch your case to the rest of the people on this committee. So I just wanted to get like a good response from you about these grades because, these other people might see these C's that you have and they may not like that. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm done. Like, this is it. I'm not getting in. I remember after I left, I called, I forget who, and I was just crying. And I was like, this
Oh.
is it. I have to drop out of college because I can't afford college anymore. Like, we're done. And I think it was like a week later that I got a call, and they're like, yeah, you were accepted into the program. And I was like, oh my God. And Derek always laughs. He's like, I was not that mean about it. And I was like, well, to me, it seemed like you were. So. It was really
Oh
funny.
wow.
But I remember too, like at that point in time, I was really excited because I was like, wow, I'm gonna get to do research and like no one else in undergrad is doing this except for
Hmm.
me. And
Hmm.
that's when I learned too, like for people in my major, a lot of people were doing research. And had I not been introduced to that environment or that program, I wouldn't have known. And then if I wanted to move past and, get a good job in my field or even go to grad school, I wouldn't have been really able to because I didn't have that experience. And so that's something I think about to this day where I'm like, wow, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm a first gen student too, obviously. And so, no one in my family could tell me that I would have needed that. And so I always think about that as well, being like, that's another way Trio saved me because I would have no idea that's what I needed to do unless someone told me and they did. So,
Wow. That's like really a highlight of like how Trio does that intervention and
hmm
puts you on a path of opportunities that you never really seen before. And so now
yeah.
you have all these other opportunities, and you're like, this would have never been possible had I not connected with Trio.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And like I got to go to a lot of different conferences too
That's
through
awesome.
undergrad, which is really cool, all over the country. I would go to the American Academy of Forensic Sciences conference. And I think my first year I went with a friend. So we went to Anaheim in California and we were
Hmm.
there for the week. And then the next year I want to say I went to, or no, the next year I think was online because of COVID and stuff. But then after that, like I went to Seattle and then there was another place that I went to. Like, I got to go to so many different places because of this and then meet so many different people too, which was really great. And I had such a good time with it, especially because, like, I would have never had that opportunity if Trio didn't help me. Like, there's no way I can afford it. Like, those fees that some of these programs
Oh
charge
yeah,
just for you to
very
go are
yeah,
crazy.
right.
And I was like, there's no way. There was one I was looking into. It's the National Association of Medical Examiners. They meet once a year too. And I really want to go. And if you're a medical student who is a member, it's free. But if you're not, or if you're not a member just at all, it's like $1,000 just
Oh
to
my
register.
gosh, a
And I was like,
thousand
are you
dollars?
kidding me?
Jeez.
Yeah. And I was like, there's
Wow.
no way.
No way. That is
But
whoa.
yeah, and so like thinking about it, if I didn't have this program, I wouldn't have been able to go and do any of these things. I wouldn't have been
Yeah.
able to network and meet other people in the field, and it would have been so much harder to go out and even find a job from that point. So that's something that always makes me very happy to think back on that I got to have these opportunities.
Can you give us a highlight about the TRIO programs, either student support services or McNair, that you really enjoyed the most?
Ooh, I think my favorite thing was being able to meet other students like me, who are equally as like nerdy and excited about their field. And so then I got to really surround myself with people who are like-minded to help kind of motivate me. And it was nice to see people in other areas too, because there was this one person who was in my program and she majored in physics and mathematics. And I was like, physics goes right over my head. I have no idea. But it was really cool to be able to learn from her and the different things
Mhm.
that she was doing. And so being able to sit with all these students who are just so, so smart in different areas and hear them talk about it, especially because McNair isn't solely like a STEM program, it's also
Right.
for humanities and things like that.
Hmm.
And so hearing the other students talk about, their stuff with their English major and like the things that they're reading about and stuff like that, I think it really solidified the idea that, humanities is just as important as STEM is. And, you have to have one to balance out the other. You can't just have one or the other. And so
Hmm.
being able to learn about that, I think was also really important to see just how broad and like exciting the world can be with everything around you and to know that there are like infinite possibilities of things to learn about. And you can go in any direction you want to and just know that there's going to be more.
Yeah. It sounds like so you entering Trio also gave you the opportunity to start thinking about the type of academia you wanted to go to. Was it
Mhm.
going to be in your future to continue your academic studies and be like a professor or like a teacher, or were you thinking of a different career?
So when I first started, I wanted to be a forensic anthropologist. And so I knew for that I had to get a PhD.
Hmm.
And when I first started, we had a forensic anthropologist here who was kind of the head of our forensics program. But then after like 2 or 3 years, she ended up leaving to go to Florida instead. And I remember sitting there and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? And like I met with her and talked with her, and she even told me, she's like, if I can recommend anything, unless you are so deeply in love with this line of work, like don't go into forensic anthropology. She's like, trying to get a job in the field is very difficult unless you're okay with like working at museums or doing these different things. Most forensic anthropologists are kind of like on call. They're contracted workers, so they get contacted by these different departments to come in and do things. And she's like, it's a really long process and it can be really hard. So if you're not fully in love with it, like look into other things too to see what your options are. And I was like, you know what? Okay. So I looked around and I saw that we had forensic pathologists on campus. And so I emailed them a few times and was able to meet with them and hear them talk about that field more and what it was. And pretty much immediately, like I fell in love with it and was like, yeah, that's
Wow.
what I want to do. I think that's really cool. Because then also the idea of pathology, I think it was something that like I always I think about the things that I did as a kid and was like, yeah, I was meant to be a pathologist kind of a thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but also with my dad and him being diagnosed with Alzheimer's and dementia, that also made me more interested in pathology. Because one of the things about those neurodegenerative disorders is that you can't really firmly diagnose it until autopsy.
Hmm.
So sometimes this can lead to different things like misdiagnoses and all that stuff, because it's really hard. A lot of
For sure.
symptoms overlap and there's different things going on.
Hmm.
And so that was also something that was like, I want to know more about that.
Yeah.
I want to learn about that and be involved with stuff like that. And so that kind of pushed me more so towards pathology as well. And I wasn't able to start working right away in forensic pathology, but I think I bothered them enough that they finally just let me work
You
for them.
bothered them enough, is what I'm sorry.
Yeah. I always laugh about it because I did do like a summer research program at our university in the pathology lab at the medical school, which is slightly
Hmm.
different from forensics. And
Hmm.
so I worked there, and then at the end of the summer, they offered us a job and were like, "Hey, like, if you want to stay through the school year, you can." And I was like, "Well, I'm interested in the forensic side of things. Like, am I able to transfer over there instead?" And the guy who ran it, he was married to the head forensic pathologist. And so he's like, yeah,
Oh,
like, let me go and talk to them and we'll see. And I was like, okay, cool.
yeah.
And so then we did like the end of the summer poster session. And I was just kind of standing there talking to whoever. And then the lady who runs it, she came over and she was like, oh, hey, I heard you're interested in forensics. Like, do you want a job? And I was like, yeah, of course I do. And
Yeah.
so right away, she's like, okay, well, when you get back from your trip home to Michigan, like, just come to the office. We'll set up a time and we'll get you in and get you started. And I was like, okay, great. And so that's how I got into that. And then actually having that experience too, I just loved it even more. And just all the stuff that I was doing and the way that like you get to help people on such a different level that people don't often think about was really important to me.
Absolutely. What were some challenges and successes, not only of your college career, but about this pathway that you created about research and getting into this field of forensic pathology? Can you tell us a little bit about some of your successes and challenges there?
Yeah. So I think one of the bigger challenges that I learned about this kind of path too is that there's going to be a lot of failures.
Mm,
And that's
mm,
just a part of the process.
hmm.
And now I always think about it, and I tell my students too that part of just working in science is failing and knowing how to come back from it because success isn't a linear pathway. Like you don't just do good once and then you're
Yeah,
set for the rest of your career. Like there are going to be
right.
times where you mess something up and something goes wrong. And so you have to know how to manage that. And that was really hard because I had this mindset of that independence where I didn't want to ask for help. And so I wanted to do things on my own. And also, if I mess something up, I would automatically be like, oh, well, I'm not cut out for this. Like, this isn't the field for me. Obviously, I can't do this. I'm not smart enough, kind of a deal. And thankfully, my passion overcame that. And so when I did mess up, I would just, you acknowledge it and you move on. You learn from it.
Yeah.
And you just have to keep going. And so, like, when I was working at forensics doing autopsies and stuff, when you were learning about that, like, I had no idea about any anatomy. I didn't have that kind of background. I didn't know how to do big dissections like that. And so I had to learn a lot right away.
Hmm.
And obviously, you're going to mess things up here and there. And thankfully, it is an environment where you can mess something up. It's not like someone's life is on the line necessarily, but you have to understand, like, if you're not comfortable doing something, you can always ask for help. And especially if it's something that's maybe more important for the case, usually the pathologist would come over and do it for themselves, or, they would guide you through it. And so just knowing and being okay with saying, hey, I messed up was so hard. But then when I got there, that made me really happy because I was like, now I know that I'm going to be okay because I'm okay with messing up. It happens. We have a bad day and you learn. And then, usually you get embarrassed enough that you don't make that mistake again. You remember that for the
Right.
rest of your life.
It sticks with you.
Yeah, exactly. I remember one of the times during an autopsy, I accidentally removed a little too much of something that I shouldn't have,
Mm.
because I could not tell. I won't go into any detail for people who are squeamish or anything, but I didn't notice at first. I just removed this organ and I plopped it down for the pathologist and I went and sat down because I had just finished everything. And she like turns around, she's kind of giggling, and she's like, "Hey, Julia, I think you took out just a little too much." And she turns around and
Oh
shows me.
no.
Oh, it was bad. It was
Oh
really,
no.
really bad. Like, if I could describe this to you, oh my gosh, people would think that I was absolutely insane. And I almost cried because I was so embarrassed. And I was like, I can't believe that I just did that to a person and didn't know. Like, it was something, thankfully, that would be covered at a funeral. But still, it's like, I am very respectful of the human body and I don't want to take things out that I don't need to take out.
For sure. For
I
sure.
want people to have, their bits and pieces where it needs to be if it needs to be there.
Yes, absolutely.
And she would just laughed at me. She's like, "Don't worry, like we're gonna call the funeral home. We're gonna tell them that, I needed this to do this type of exam and like it is what it is." And we found out that because of the case, when I was making these cuts, the tissue was more like elastic, or not elastic, more just stretchy and thin. So when I pull it tight, because you would want to hold everything tight so you can see exactly where you can cut, it pulled more of the tissue up. And
Oh,
so then I cut lower down than what I had planned.
gotcha.
And so she's like, this could have happened to anyone. Like, don't worry. And I sat there and I was like, okay, I'm so sorry. And I was so embarrassed and I was terrified of doing that again for like a month. And then at one point, because when I first started working there were only like 3 or 4 of us techs. So, not everyone's going to be there every day. So then I was there by myself with a pathologist once and I was like, well, it looks like I have to do it again. I guess we'll just see what happens and go from there. And so then I didn't do it. It went fine. And that's when I was like, oh, everything is okay.
World is still
Um,
intact.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And no one got hurt. Everyone is fine. I'm still alive. Like I made it out okay. Like no one's angry, things like that. And so that definitely biggest challenge in my book is understanding that failure and being able to laugh at yourself about it later.
Absolutely.
That
Yeah.
helps a lot too.
Okay.
But then also, I would say one of my successes that I'm really excited about is I actually got an award from the university, I think last
That's
year. So I
amazing.
was yeah, I
Yeah.
got an award as a leader in action for the
That's awesome.
university.
I was
Yeah.
reading, actually, to be perfectly transparent, I was reading your article when I was looking you up
Yeah.
and I was doing a little bit of research on you. I
Hmm.
saw that and I was like, wow, that's amazing. So I'm glad you brought that
Yeah.
up.
No, it was a lot of fun. It was definitely bigger than I thought it was because when they had asked me, they actually sent out like a general email and they're like, "Hey, like your name was recommended to us as someone who would be a good candidate for this award. Like, can you
Perfect.
send us a short video of you talking over some of the stuff that you do and like have done through UND?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay." So I sent them a video and I like put in there. I was like, "There's so much stuff that I've done that it like would take me hours to go through. So like here are the highlights, and I ran through it really fast, and then I was eventually chosen. And so they're like, yeah, like we really liked your video, so like we would like to sit down with you. So I met with one person just to go over questions, kind of like this, and just talk about it. And she took notes, and she was telling me, she's like, I listened to your video, and then I like read through your like curriculum vitae and all that. And she's like, I was just so amazed at all the stuff that you did. And I don't understand how you had any time for it. And I was like, I don't even know. I just did it, and that's all I got.
Yeah.
And but they were so great. And then later they had because they also did a video, and so there's a YouTube video up with it where I did like some questions where I answered and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember the team that came in, it was so funny. We had the best time. It was in the medical school, and I hadn't really told anyone that I got this award. And they came in with a bunch of cameras and like different lighting and
Whoa.
backdrops and like all this fancy stuff. And I was like,
TV
I thought this
production.
was gonna be, yeah, I was like, I thought this was gonna be more low key, and now I feel
Sure.
weird. And so like everyone in the pathology department, they would like come around the corner and just like look, and then they'd disappear, and then I'd see them come back with like three other people, and they'd all look to see what was going on. And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so weird. And but we had a great time. We were laughing and just trying to like get good stuff and pictures. And so we went into the lab and did a few, and then also into the microscopy core and with the big microscope and got some pictures there. And we were all just laughing because there was one point I remember they told me, they're like, okay, do kind of like a fake laugh so it kind of looks natural and we can get a good
Oh,
picture.
I
And I was
see.
like, okay,
Yeah,
sounds good.
yeah.
And I just burst out in this like horribly maniacal laughter because I was like, I don't know what else to do. And everyone like
That's
froze for a
hilarious.
second and stared at me. And then everyone started laughing. And so then they got really great pictures because of that. And
Yeah,
I was just cracking up. And they were like, you're one of the most interesting people that we've talked to, because they were
that's
saying,
awesome.
some students, they go in and they have very short answers, and they're like, we love that you just keep talking and you have more stuff to talk about. And I was like, yeah, of course. I have a whole lot of life that I've lived in my 26 years. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
but no, we had a great time. And I think that's something that I'm really proud of because of the fact that, like, with my social media, I want to encourage other people who may be in similar situations to me, whether they're first gen or low income, if they're a woman or, a girl who's interested in science, who feels like they can't do it. I want them to know that they can. And I also want them to know that diversity in these fields is important and is necessary, and we need people who are diverse, but also that it's okay to use your own voice, and that it's important to use your own voice to stand up for
Absolutely.
these things. And that's how we make progress, and that's how we make change. And it's especially important right now with everything going on that we have these voices and we listen to them. And so I always try to encourage people to do that. So when I got the award, it was definitely something that I was very, very proud of and was excited that I was able to share with more people.
That's awesome. I love that. Um, can you, we already talked about a little bit about your job, but can you talk to us, like, is this the career you envision being in the current job that you're in? And yeah, is it something that you continue to show up in and say, this is what I love to do?
Right. So I will say, I think I mentioned earlier too that when I was younger, I wanted to be a marine biologist instead. And I tell everyone this story because it makes me laugh so hard. My sister was always so excited that I was going to go into marine biology because she's like, I can go and swim with dolphins and go and see the whales. And now I'm in forensics, and I was like, I can show you a dead body instead. And she's like, no. And I always laugh about it, and she thinks it's funny too. But um I definitely didn't see myself here for a very long time. I think I did always have a slight interest in medicine, but
Mm,
I
mhm.
just didn't think of myself as being good enough or smart enough for it. And so getting into this position when I worked as an autopsy technician, as soon as I started that job, I was like, yeah, this is it. Like this is the one for me. And
Yeah.
working as a scribe, I would say in the emergency department, I want to be more hands-on than what they typically are. But I'm so happy that I got to be in the emergency department to see. This is my
Oh,
cat.
cameo
She's saying
of your
hi.
kitty. Oh,
Yeah. But I was very excited that I got to have that opportunity because the one thing that I really like about forensic pathology is that it includes so many different areas of medicine that you don't think about. So, like, when you're doing an
Mhm.
autopsy, you have to have a basic understanding of different surgeries, like not necessarily how to perform them, but what's going on. Because, if you have a case where they had a surgery, you have to be able to look at it and be like, yeah, that looks like it was done right, or something went wrong here. And then also, like for emergency medicine, if the interventions that they did were appropriate, if someone was intubated, if that was done correctly, because, sometimes they can go down the wrong tube, stuff
Oh, for
like
sure.
that. And then
Yeah.
you're pumping air into the stomach instead. And things, there's so much that goes into it. And so you really have to have a good broad understanding of all these different areas. And so that's why I like to weasel my way into these other things and just get to learn more.
That's awesome.
I'm one of
Yeah.
those people, I just love learning so many different things all the time. And if I could learn forever, I would.
Hmm.
Just
Hmm.
be in school all the time to learn about different stuff. And so being able to do that, I can definitely see myself being in medicine now.
Yeah.
Um, and I briefly mentioned earlier too that like thinking back on it, even as a kid, I should have known that I was going to be a pathologist because like really when I was really, really little, I had just a fascination with scissors where I love scissors. And
Yeah.
my problem too is that I would cut off all my hair. I think I
Oh
want
my
to say
gosh.
my thought behind it was that I had bangs as a kid, but I didn't like them. And I
Mm.
didn't understand that you had to grow your hair out to get rid of it. So I think I just kept cutting them off because I was like, I don't want them
Oh,
anymore.
yeah.
But my sister will always say, like, you could lay out a pile of cookies and then put scissors next to it, and I'd go for the scissors every single time. Like, I was just weirdly obsessed with this. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I was destined to be a pathologist. Or like when I
Absolutely.
was in first grade, before I really understood morals and ethics, I stole a book from our library. And I still have it to this day
You still
too.
have
And
it.
yeah, it's
Okay.
actually, hold on, I'm gonna get it really quick. It's on my bookshelf over here. Um, it's called Bony Legs, and it's the creepiest book you could ever imagine in your
Wow.
whole life.
Yeah.
It's basically an Americanized version of Baba Yaga, from like Russian culture and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
it's about a witch who eats children.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And so she like lures kids into her place and tries to eat them. But this little girl like gets away and stuff in this book. And I was just like amazed by this book as a first grade
You
kid.
were
So I
drawn by it.
took
You're
it
like,
home.
wow.
Yeah, I took it and I still have it. And I think back and I was like, yeah, I was real weird as a
No,
kid.
we,
So
I
of
mean, I
course
think you
I'd
were just
pick a
wired
weird
differently.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, it makes sense that I chose this line of work. And one of the things that the ER physician that I was working with told me when I told him I was interested in pathology, and he's like, no offense to you. I even have a friend who's in pathology, but pathologists are real weird. And I laughed so hard and I was like, you're not wrong. Like, we are really weird people and we like weird things. That's why we're in this field.
Absolutely.
And he laughed so hard and he's like, yeah, you guys, you're just all over the place. You have such strange interests and whatnot. And I'm like, yeah, you gotta be weird if you're gonna be in
Oh,
pathology.
absolutely. Absolutely. So obviously you're going to pursue your MD, PhD. You're hoping to get into this one school.
Hmm.
But what do you think your career will look like 5 to 10 years from now?
Yeah, so if I do get in, so medical school itself is about 4 years long, and then you go into residency. So
Hmm.
my goal would be either to do an anatomic pathology and clinical pathology residency or anatomic and neuropathology residency. And so this would take about 4-ish years to do.
Hmm.
And then once I'm done with that, I would have to do a fellowship in forensic pathology, which would be a year long. And
Wow.
so it's definitely a very, very long path.
For sure.
And it's one of those things where medicine is definitely like an endurance sport
It
of
sounds like
sorts.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, we're like, you have to be prepared to be a lifelong learner. And I think that's why it works out so well for me because of the fact that I like to learn so much.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I just thoroughly enjoy teaching myself different things like this. And so that's always something that I will tell other students too. And because I had asked a while ago some of the forensic pathologists, like what kind of advice you would give to someone considering this. And the one was like, know that if you're in it, you got to be in it. Like, it's not
Yeah.
something that
Yeah.
you can just kind of passively do. Like, you have to be dedicated and
Committed to
understand the
it.
time
Yeah.
commitment that goes into
Wow.
it. And so while it's going to be a while, after all of that, and hopefully when I start working one day, I also want to be more involved in public health. And so something that our physicians did in pathology was a lot of outreach. I think they made like these videos that talked over like more basic or common topics for different people to watch so they could learn more about it. I think they did things like breast cancer and stuff like that. And so I think a lot of the communities, especially here where there's a lot of indigenous communities, they have different issues that they're all struggling with. And so being able to work with these communities would be really important to me because I want them, they don't really have great access to education, unfortunately, or there's a really big language barrier. And when you go in to see your doctor, right now with the way the system is set up, you get in there for like 5, 10 minutes maybe because they've crammed in so many patients to their day due to regulations by like the hospitals and whatnot that they don't have time to really sit and talk with you about these things. So I would really like to start something where I could go to these communities and work with them, maybe answer questions, do different like forums or something, and also do like videos or maybe like pamphlets or things that I can hand out to teach about some major things that are kind of plaguing their society at that point in time. And so just to help them in that regard. And there have been some people where I've told them this and they're like, so you think these communities are stupid? And I want to clarify, no.
Mhm.
The issue is the educational barrier, and it's not fair. And I think these people are very capable of learning different things, and that's why I want to teach it to them.
Yeah,
And they just need to have someone that's there that they can trust, especially to work with them on it,
that's so
because right
important.
now yeah, it's hard. Physicians, they often get a lot of crap against them because of the fact that, it's the system that hurts them. They're exhausted, they're tired and burnt out. And so, sometimes, like in my situation, they don't really listen to you, or, they just breeze through it because they don't think that you have an issue, or, you're accused of lying or something like that. And
Mhm.
so it's hard to find someone that you can really sit down to or sit down with and talk to. And so I want to be able to be that for different people. Even if I'm working in forensic pathology, I think being involved in public health measures is a really important and great way to do that.
Absolutely. What advice? So we're now at the point of the podcast. We're about to wrap up. I'm going to
Yes.
put you on the hot seat. What advice do you have for trio professionals who are listening to this podcast?
Ooh, so my advice would always be to never give up on your students. Because a lot of the students that show up to TRIO, they're there because they want to be there. They do want this help. And sometimes, they may be like me and they may not want to ask for help. And so sometimes you might have to send a few emails just to get through to them and to help them understand that you care and that you're there for them.
Hmm.
Let them know that, nothing is going to change about that unless, you commit some kind of horrific crime. They're always going to be there in your corner and that they're going to help you. And I think that's really big because I've met a lot of freshman students, I had set up times for tutoring and, they may not show up. And at the time, I'd be really annoyed because it's like, oh my gosh, well, now it's wasting my time and it's
Hmm.
frustrating. But at the end of the day, I try to also put myself in their shoes and remember, they may be coming from a different situation. Maybe they're having a hard time. Maybe they're tired.
Hmm.
There's a lot that goes into it. And so I try to give them more chances. And, after a little bit, that's when you can be more stern and be like, okay, like we've set up 2 or 3 appointments and you've skipped every single one. Like, we can't keep doing this. So what we need to do is figure out a new way to go about this and
Yeah,
like how we want to get there. Because obviously you want help and you need the help. So we need to work on communication skills so that way we can figure out how I can do that for you. And I think that's the
absolutely.
biggest thing because a lot of students are scared about asking for that kind of help, or they don't really realize that they need it until they need
Yeah.
it.
So, and great that you ended on that note with the professionals, but now I'm going to flip it and ask you, what advice do you have for trio students, whether they're pre-college, in college, or looking to return to college?
Right, yeah. To kind of piggyback off what I last said, don't be afraid to ask for help, but also
That's a
don't be
good one.
afraid
Yeah.
to learn.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people, especially me, I am definitely a culprit of this, is that if I'm not good at something right away, I don't want to keep doing it. And so like a lot of
Yeah,
hobbies that I've tried to pick up were like knitting or like cross-stitching,
for
stuff
sure.
like that. If I'm not good at it right away, I'm like, never
I'm done.
mind.
Yeah.
And I don't care. But there is nothing wrong with being bad at something, right?
Absolutely.
And that's how you learn. And so I always will tell my
Absolutely.
students too, like, try different classes if you can. If you have an interest in something, but you're not sure about it, try to take a class in it and just see. Because, maybe it'll change your life. And now suddenly you're majoring in something different, or you take it and realize, never mind. And now you at least know. Because you don't want
Absolutely.
to end up, 5, 10 years down the road thinking about, well, what if I did go into
Right.
this field instead?
Right.
And then you have no idea. So I always try to tell people, to the best of your ability, try to explore. And if you can't take extra classes because of money issues, try to join different clubs, meet up with people who are in this major to talk to them and see what they say. You can always look up videos online too. There's nothing wrong with teaching yourself extra stuff. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah,
I
it's
love that.
always just more and it's fun and it's exciting. So,
Awesome. Thank you, Julia. Before I ask you this next question, where can folks find you on social media?
yeah, so I'm on Instagram and TikTok and also Blue Sky at My Forensic Path. It's just all lowercase. So I'm most often on Instagram, but occasionally on Blue Sky. I try to go on there a little bit more now, but not
Same.
as often as I would like to be. I get overwhelmed after the 2 different social media accounts. My
Oh, no,
brain
yeah,
kind of
it's
short
overwhelming.
circuits a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am always there ready to answer questions from different students and hang out with people, see what they're doing. I love to pass on my wisdom to other students every now and then.
I love it. What is something that you're currently reading, watching, or listening to?
Ooh, so I actually just started reading this one book. I believe it's called All That Remains. So it's
I've-
a book about this one lady. Oh gosh, I don't want to get her name wrong. Hold on, I'm gonna Google it really quick because I'm gonna be real
I will
embarrassed.
edit this part. We're editing this part out. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Take your
Okay.
time.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So her name is Sue Black. So the book that I am reading, just to restate that, is All That Remains by Sue Black. So she's a renowned forensic scientist on death, mortality, and solving crimes. And so she does more forensic anthropology related things, but I only just started it the other day, but she's kind of talking about her experience with school and like how she got to where she is and different things like that. And I always think it's really cool to read about people in other fields that may be similar to mine. I love doing that. But I also really love reading like horror books. I think they're so fun. I love anything scary themed.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So I love to do that. I'm
I kind of
also
picked up on it
currently,
as we were
oh
interviewing.
yeah, yeah. My Bony Legs book, yeah. No, I'm also rewatching the House show on TV. I just love that show so much. I've been going through that again, but no, I love to do or be involved in different types of media. Love to read different things and try to change it up every now and then. Some fiction, some nonfiction. Go back and forth. I think it's fun.
That's awesome. I'm going to give you the most challenging question I think I've
Ooh.
posed on this podcast. And I think, I don't know how you'll take it. Describe yourself using only one word.
Ooh. Hmm. I think I would go with what I said kind of earlier, stubborn.
Stubborn. Okay.
That would be my word because I think it like just generally kind of has a negative connotation behind it, but it doesn't always have to be
It doesn't.
negative.
Yeah.
Um, Being stubborn and that I don't like it when someone tells me no. I will always keep trying to find new ways to do things
Yeah.
and I will get things done especially if someone tells me that I can't do whatever it is that I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
But I also am stubborn with myself in that like I know what I'm capable of and I know what I can do and I'm not gonna let myself not live up to that
Yes.
expectation. So I think it's important for myself to have that expectation of just myself. That way, I don't have to worry about so much other people's expectations. But for me, I know what I can do at the end of the day, and that's what's important.
Absolutely. Julia, it has been a true pleasure hearing your trio story, hearing your educational journey. I'd love to have you back on the podcast at some point so we can kind of give some updates about what you're currently doing. But yeah, it's been wonderful having you on the podcast.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. I would love to come back someday. It's been a lot of fun being able to sit and talk about it. I always love trio and talking about it as much as I can, so it was great
Absolutely.
to be here.
Well, thank you so much for your time. We have a tradition on the Let's Talk Trio podcast where we have the guests do a sign off. Do you care to do the honors?
Oh, a sign off. Hi, my name is Julia Kochanowski, and I wanted to thank all of you for being here today to listen to my story and the things that I've done. And I think I'm just another student who's here to prove that trio does in fact work.
Are you a participant, alum, or staff of a TRIO program? Do you want your program highlighted? You or your program could be featured in an upcoming episode of Let's Talk TRIO. Get a hold of us by going to our Facebook page or Instagram and send us a direct message. Search for Let's Talk TRIO. We want to get your story to the public.
You just heard from our guest, Julia Kochanowski, TRIO alum of the TRIO McNair Scholars Program from the University of North Dakota. Thank you, Julia, for being on the podcast and for sharing your TRIO journey. Remember, if you would like to be on the Let's Talk TRIO podcast or know a staff, advocate, participant, or alumni, send us an email at letstalktrio@gmail.com. That email again is letstalktrio@gmail.com. A heartfelt thanks to our individual supporters, Angelica Villalpando, Dr. Jamie Motley, Dr. Ryan Barone, Dr. Jeff Naputi, Angelica Valdez, Rosario Riley, Felicia Rivera, Eric Lamaster, Jeff Calden, and Jaded Electronics. Thank you to our corporate sponsors, TRIOJoblist.com, Nosotros Education Center, Longsdale Publishing, Student Access, and the TRIO Store, powered by Proforma. Visit www.thetriostore.com, your source for TRIO graduation stoles. Thank you all so much for your continued support of this podcast. You too can be a sponsor of the Let's Talk TRIO podcast in one of three ways. Become a monthly patron on Patreon. Our base level starts at $1 a month. Become a corporate sponsor by placing an ad on the podcast. Contact us for details. Become a supporter with a one-time donation to the podcast business PayPal account. Our business handle is Let's Talk TRIO. I'd like to take a moment to thank our honorary members of the Let's Talk TRIO podcast, Roderick Chambers, Tony Ho, Scott Kendall, and Susan Cramp. The Let's Talk TRIO podcast team is John Russell, audio engineer, music producer and composer, and post-production editor. Amelia Castañeda, script supervisor, marketing manager, social media manager, and producer. Juan Rivas, executive producer and host. Be sure to follow the Let's Talk TRIO podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. This episode was recorded on Monday, May 26th, 2025. Remember to lift your voice for TRIO. Call your congressional representatives now to defend the TRIO programs. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode.